Recording in progress.
Welcome, everyone, to the May 1st, 2023 regular Board of Alderman meeting. Would everybody please join with me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance? Roll call, please.
Alderman Plufka.
Here.
Alderwoman Tice. Here. Alderwoman Sims.
Here.
Alderman Weggie.
Here.
Alderman Gould.
Here.
Alderman Lockmiller.
Here.
Alderwoman O'Neill. Alderman Shelton.
Here.
All members are present.
Great, thank you. Next up is approval or amendment of the agenda. Do we have any changes? Any objection to approving the same by acclamation? Seeing none, it will be so approved. Brings us down to announcements, appointments, proclamations, and recognitions. We have quite a few, but first up is the fire department, a badge pinning ceremony. Chief.
Good evening, and thank you for this opportunity. I'm going to read a bio for our newest employee. This is Andrew Smith. He goes by AJ. He began his career with the Brentwood Fire Department March 27th, 2023 as a firefighter paramedic. AJ was raised in Steelville, Illinois, where he graduated high school in 2010. After graduation, AJ attended Southwestern Illinois College in Belleville and obtained his state firefighter 1 and 2, as well as his EMT basic. He later attended Jefferson College in Hillsboro, Missouri, where he obtained an associate's degree in paramedic technology. In 2010, AJ began volunteering for the Steelville Fire Department and working for Union Pacific Railroad full-time. He is a graduate of the St. Louis County Fire Academy, Class 117. AJ and his wife, Sarah, and their 8-month-old daughter, Emerson, they make their home in Hillsboro, Missouri. Sarah works as a nurse for SSM Health. Some of AJ's hobbies include playing golf, video games, and spending time with family, friends, hunting, and fishing. We got him out of turkey hunting, I think. So firefighter paramedic Smith is excited for the opportunity to serve the Brentwood Fire Department, so we welcome AJ. Do a swearing-in ceremony.
Repeat after me. I, Andrew Smith,
I, Andrew Smith,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and of the state of Missouri,
and of the state of Missouri,
ordinances of the city of Brentwood,
the ordinance of the city of Brentwood.
that I will faithfully and diligently demean myself
I will faithfully and diligently demean myself
at all times
at all times
while serving as a firefighter paramedic
while serving as a firefighter paramedic
for the city of Brentwood,
for the city of Brentwood,
for which I was officially appointed on the first day of May 2020. Congratulations. This is his.
Perfect. Perfect. Fast, fast.
Literally, yes.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you. Nice meeting you.
Excuse me, Mayor, I think your mic might be off.
Thank you. Oh, my gosh, they missed my whole local government proclamation. Uh, Local government's very important. The committee appointments and reappointments, we're not going to make any changes. I'll just keep them as is, but if you do, I would encourage all of you to reach out at your ward meetings, for instance, and let residents know that if they're interested in serving the city and the residents, just tell them to either contact myself, contact Kelly, and we'll get the volunteer interest form to them. And we can then take a look at filling any vacancies that we might have. The fourth thing is the election of the mayor pro tem. This is something that we do, I guess, every year after the election, the April municipal election. So it's that time again. And so with that, I would entertain a motion to appoint or nominate one of you 8 fine folks to act as the mayor pro tem for this upcoming year.
I nominate Alderman Plufka. As
Second.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Okay, what other nominations do we have? None? All right. Well, I think by acclamation, you win. If you want to have a vote, we can certainly do that. Mr. City Attorney, are we okay doing it that way, or?
Elect by acclamation would be.
Can we get a motion to elect by
moved.
acclamation?
Second.
All right, any discussion on that?
I only want to make sure that you're going to be here for every meeting in the next calendar year.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Congratulations, Alderman Plufka.
Thank you.
Brings us down to item 5, public hearing. Public hearing for the text amendment to section 400.1320 subsection C and section 400.1330 subsection C to allow for adult daycare centers for the elderly and persons with disabilities that offer daytime programming for adults with development disabilities and respite for families who have a person with disabilities living at home in conjunction with or without a group home as a conditional use on lots of not less than 1/2 acre for the A and B single-family residential districts. With that, I will open the public hearing.
Good evening, Whitney Kelly on behalf of the City of Brentwood. The text amendment before you is to allow for La Arch to operate as an adult daycare at 9445 Litzinger Road, and then would allow for the redevelopment of the property at 9441 into a group home. They would be combining the lots to create a full just over a 1/2 acre to meet with the requirements of the proposed text amendment before you. Daycares are allowed in the residential districts provided they're on lots of a 1/2 acre, so we were looking to be consistent with that requirement. And it could be with or without the group home. The group home would then limit any other group home within 500 feet, so that permitted use standard would still apply with this change, yeah.
Okay?
And I'm sorry.
No,
And the
go ahead.
Planning and Zoning Commission recommended approval by a vote of 8-0.
Okay, do we have any questions for Whitney? Looking to the Ward 1 Alder people?
Well, are we going to have a discussion when
We'll do it, we can do it later
At
on
the-
when
Oh,
it comes
Is this a
back
public
up.
hearing?
What?
This is public hearing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just a public hearing. Okay, if that's it, then we will close the public hearing. Oh, I'm sorry. Is there anybody in the audience that cares to speak to that? Yeah, come on down. Sure, come on down, Paula. Good.
I have a short PowerPoint presentation. Just
There we go.
My name is Paula Kilcoyne. I am the Executive Director of L'Arche St. Louis. Who is L'Arche St. Louis and what is our purpose? We were established in 2011 by a group of local citizens. We are a nonprofit. We're licensed by the state of Missouri to provide care, support, and community for adults with an intellectual disability and a developmental disability. We provide this care through small, lifelong homes, personalized supports, daytime activities, and a family outreach program. And why do we do this? Our fellow citizens with an intellectual disability have the same need that each one of us has for quality care and support, the opportunity to contribute, to have safe and secure housing, and a circle of trusted friends. Right now, there are over 600 people with an intellectual disability waiting for long-term home in the state of Missouri, and many are in impossible situations. L'Arche currently has homes in Webster and Maplewood. Each home has a maximum of 4 people with a disability in each home. This is their permanent adult home with 24/7 supports. These are our 3 current homes. We also host inclusive community events like our Walk and Roll in Memorial Park, which was co-sponsored by the Parks and Rec of the city of Brentwood. We go out to area high schools and colleges and speak to students about living with difference, and we express the contributions that people with disabilities make when they're included fully in society. The properties at 9445 and 9441 were purchased by L'Arche St. Louis in the fall of 2021. We purchased them from Family Forward, which is an agency that in those 2 buildings would house hundreds of children over many, many years who also had developmental and physical disabilities. In fact, 2 of our members were there when they were children in the foster and adoptive system and needed staffing. It was a big operation. I think have dozens of children there at any given time. And they were in serious situations, homeless, waiting for a better situation. Our intention as L'Arche St. Louis is to use the 2 properties for our mission of supporting local citizens who have an intellectual disability. The larger building on 9445, the orange brick, will be used for our leadership team of 10 people and to provide an individualized day program for 10 people. With our ownership of the property, this iconic 945 Litzinger building that so many people drive by every day is no longer the residential building like it was for the children. We have significantly reduced the density and use of the property and the mission activity. At the time, that was, thought to congregate and have large groups. Our mission is much, much smaller and individualized. The current home on 9441 will be torn down, and we will build a new long-term residential home for 4 individuals who have an intellectual disability. And in our model, we have live-in care providers, so there will be space for them to also live with them. The house will be fully accessible, ADA compliant. From the outside and on the inside, it will look like any other home in the neighborhood, often one of the prettiest, we're told, on our other homes. The new home will be the first permanent lifelong home for individuals with an intellectual disability in the city of Brentwood, and we are very excited to be making history with the citizens of Brentwood in this way. Our board of directors. Thank you very much. I don't know if the
Yeah, if the
entertain
board has
questions from-
questions, go ahead and ask them. Otherwise, when this comes back up on the agenda, you'll have another opportunity to answer any questions.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Paul. That brings us to, oh yeah, I'm sorry, come on down. Yeah.
Yes, so my name is Kara Carricker, and I live at 9418 Tillis Drive, and so I live right behind their building. And I do think that they do great work, and but as she had mentioned in her PowerPoint, there has been significantly reduced activity back there, which has been nice. But I have a lot of concerns on how much the activity will, pick up once this happens. So as mentioned there'll be 4 people that are taking care of the people that live there today. And then with that being said, these folks also have family and friends that will be visiting them as well, which will also bring some traffic in. And then that does not even account for the daycare. So that is going to bring significant traffic on McKnight and Litzinger, which is already an area that is highly trafficked. I see an accident almost every single day, and it's very dangerous already. So I would like for everybody to think about that as we think about our residents. So thank you.
Thank you, Kara. Anybody else in the public care to speak during this, the public hearing for this text amendment? Not, we will close public hearing and move on to the next item, and that is citizen comments. Anybody in the public care to address the board on any matter, now is the time to do so. You will be given up to 3 minutes. All we ask is that you come to the podium, state your name and your address. Unless, of course, you're online. All right. Moving down to mayor and alderman reports. First up is the mayor. I have no reports. Alderman Plufka.
I have no reports. Thank you very much. for the vote.
Alderwoman Tice.
The Ward 1 meeting will be on Tuesday, May 23rd. I'm announcing it now because it's usually a little earlier in the month of May, so look for that coming up on Tuesday, the 23rd.
Alderwoman Sims.
Ward 2 will be having a meeting on this coming Wednesday starting at 6 o'clock at the Rec Center.
Alderman Weggie.
No report.
Alderman Gould.
No report.
Alderman Lockmuller.
No report.
Alderwoman O'Neill.
Residents of Brentwood Forest would like to thank the fire department for their response 2 weeks ago for the fire. And they are most appreciative of the door-to-door concern that firefighters are showing to get more smoke detectors in our condos and up to date. That it's something that's been neglected for a long time, and so hopefully no more fires if we can do that, but we're getting many comments from how much they appreciate actually seeing people on the street. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Alderman Shelton.
No report.
Right, brings us down to the Brentwood Bound update.
Good evening, Craig Schlitter with Navigate Building Solutions. So we have a brief update. So going through the typical update on expenditures, the only expenditures this period were through soft costs. $72,250.82 was spent on material testing, legal, project management, and IT fees. There are no changes to the additional funding categories. One piece of new business, though, a risk we've been tracking for a week or so is the Operators Union, which is a Local 513. They've been negotiating with the AGC, which is Associated General Contractors. That's the group that negotiates with some of these construction unions. They were hoping to reach a settlement Sunday night. They never reached a settlement Sunday night. That means that there was a work stoppage, so no operators showed up to work today. They're still negotiating tonight. They hope that they can reach some sort of settlement tomorrow, but they anticipate a work stoppage tomorrow as well. If they don't, there's a risk of a strike, and the difference between a work stoppage and a strike is a work stoppage, the operators just don't show up to work. A strike, if there's a strike, typically the other union tradesmen won't show up because they won't cross that picket line. So today, if you're watching the cameras, you saw Plocker working on the piers, on the overlook. That's because there wasn't a strike, and those, the carpenters and the laborers went to that location of work, and they were able to keep working. So, but if there is a strike, some of those tradesmen will not show up. So this affects Manchester Road improvements if a deal is not quickly resolved, because a strike will prevent a lot of those tradesmen from showing up. The playground, it greatly affects that. Those tradesmen will not show up until that's resolved. We spoke with Keeley today. They believe that the landscaper who has the majority of the work to do on both Phase 1 and Phase 2, that they think the contractor will still show up, but there's no guarantees for that. And then GRG Connector Part A, that contractor is not affected by this because he doesn't have any operators that are working for 513. And then the event lawn building, we're in the final punch list comments. So there are some impacts at Brentwood Bound if this doesn't quickly get resolved. We're tracking this, daily. It's out of everyone's control here, and hopefully they resolve something tomorrow, and the impacts are minimal. So that just happened last night, and we're keeping the situation at the forefront of what's going on. Any questions? Great, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Brings us down to the consent agenda. We have 3 items. Are there any requests to remove any of the items or any questions about any of the items? If not, the chair would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved. Second?
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Alderman Plufka?
Yes.
Alderwoman Tice?
Yes.
Alderwoman Sims?
Yes.
Alderman Weggie?
Yes.
Alderman Gould?
Yes.
Alderman Lockmiller?
Yes.
Alderwoman O'Neill?
Yes.
Alderman Shelton?
Yes.
Motion carries by a vote of 8 to 0.
Thank you. Brings us down to item 10, old business. There's two items. Isn't bill number 6459? That's old business, isn't it? I've got down my notes, we had a first read of that last meeting. No?
No, that's the text amendment change.
Yeah, but the recommended action is, okay, second reading, so the first, okay, got it. My bad. My notes are failing me. First up is bill number 6456. Can we get a second read by title only, please?
Second reading and consideration.
Okay. This is the one that there was a motion by, I think, by Alderman Plufka at the last meeting to have a table it or a staggered reading on this. And Chief, would you like to bring the board up to date on where we are on this?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So I believe we're joined online by Mr. Jones, attorney representing this matter.
Good
On
evening.
behalf of Brentwood. So we being the departments, sorry, had a meeting with Mr. Jones and the attorney representing the landlord. It was a very productive meeting, but it was this afternoon. And frankly, we don't have the documents complete. And so that's where we're at right now. It is still a work in progress.
I think maybe the best way to, not necessarily the best way, but one way to handle this is to kind of revisit some of the issues that the aldermen had at the last meeting, and just to ensure that those areas were addressed at today's meeting, because my understanding is that there might be some agreement between the parties, but that has not been memorialized in any type of a firm document.
You are correct.
Okay.
The items that have been brought forth to staff have been addressed, but it still has to be complete.
So, yeah, Alderman Plufka, I'm sorry.
Are the items that have been addressed contained within the memorandum we have in front of us that include that? God, I can't get it. That include the bullet point response. So those are the questions
Yes.
that have been addressed.
Yes.
And then there's some that are answers that are here that are in red. Answers to questions don't necessarily pertain to a lease term.
If I may, and as indicated, my partner Bob Jones is joining us by Zoom and has been taking the lead both in developing the formation documents for the commission as well as negotiating the lease. But if I would point out that the issue is to join the commission. And so the memorandum, the terms of membership in the commission do not address lease issues because it's the formation document for an intergovernmental cooperative entity. So the terms of the lease, which I think were all the items discussed at the last meeting.
Mayor, can I ask a question, City Attorney? Do you understand, is that the way that it's been presented to the other entities within this consortium?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And that their understanding is that their voting is not necessarily on a lease package, but they're voting on whether to come together in the way that we've described in the memorandum?
Yes, sir.
Any other questions? Alderman Tice.
So
But
Could I-
Mr. Jones can update you on
Well,
where
could
we
I
are.
sort of ask what this conversation that the city attorney and Alderman Plufka just had, does that mean that if we're voting to join this collaboration, that we're also voting to commit the capital money that is required for this, or we're just voting to come together and explore the discussion?
Correct. It would be phased in. We still have to present that to the Ways and Means Committee through our budgeting process.
Okay, thank you.
The expenditures that we discussed at the first reading, the property taxes, and the management fees, yes, I can't account for that out of this year's operating budget, our portion, but moving forward, it is presented to Ways and Means through the budget process.
Alderwoman Sims.
So, because I feel like that's not how it was presented to us previously, like there was the intergovernmental agreement and there was the lease and it was package deal. So a yes vote tonight is not an approval of that lease because we don't have an updated version of the lease of what may have come out of your conversation today.
Correct.
I think it's best to let Mr. Jones speak.
Yeah, Bob, this is David Dimmitt. If you could address the question by Alderwoman Sims, and I think one issue that the Alderwoman might have, or that some others might have, is if there is a vote to move forward with joining this commission, what control or say does this board have in the terms of the lease, if any?
Well, the legislation before the board tonight, Bill number 6456, is an authorization to enter into the intergovernmental agreement with Clayton and Richmond Heights. It does not specifically address this lease, which is still being negotiated. Previously, I prepared the intergovernmental agreement and a set of bylaws. The commission would be governed by a board of directors, 3 members, presumably 1 from each member city. And it is that board that is empowered by the intergovernmental agreement and the bylaws to enter into the lease. Presumably, you will choose a representative to serve on that board who will report back to the mayor and board and obtain input before actually entering into the lease. We do have open issues on the lease, some of which are addressed in the memo that's in the board's packet, others which are just simply talking points. And the 3 most important, in my opinion, would be the ability to terminate the lease if cost of construction is more expensive than anticipated, or one of the member cities decides to withdraw from the commission. And so what I proposed to the attorney for the landlord today was to make that first 18-month period where the commission would seek necessary permits and zoning approvals from the city of Shrewsbury to also be a due diligence period, much like a sale contract, a purchase and sale agreement, where the buyer would have absolute discretion to terminate the contract if they weren't happy with what they found as they were trying to sort through these various issues. And so that is what I would like to see in the agreement for the tenant, the commission. And they seemed receptive to that, but needed to speak to the landlord directly about it and get back to us. So that was, I think, one very important point that was raised by members of the board, and it was passed on to me, and I in turn raised it in our meeting today. Another is the right of first refusal. I drafted a right of first refusal and added it with my other revisions to the initial lease draft. And at least insofar as our discussions today, the landlord is not willing to grant a right of first refusal. I wrote it in so that it had actually 3 different components to it: a right of first refusal, a right to match any offer that might be received by the landlord, and third, to actually initiate our own offer to purchase the commission's own offer to purchase the property unsolicited and not requiring an offer from someone else. And that market price would be established by an appraisal method. Well, that was rejected, and what they're willing to give us is a right of first offer, which is different. There would be an opportunity for the landlord to notify the commission that the property is going to be listed for sale, and they would have to do so 30 days prior to publicly offering the property for sale. That would then give the commission an opportunity to make an offer. If the commission declined to make an offer, then this provision would be waived. That's what they are proposing. And so I said that I would get back to the landlord and their counsel and their representative regarding these changes. But I thought it was important, if we are going to agree to a limited right of first offer, that we have to have some idea what happens to the improvements that are going to be paid for and erected at the property at the cost of the commission. Because there is a provision in the lease that indicates that at the termination of the lease, either the improvements are going to be removed or they're going to remain in place. And the landlord wants that to be at the landlord's discretion. So I think that's dangerous language to leave in the lease if we don't have the ability to force a sale of the property if we really want to make that happen. I don't know whether the ultimate goal will be to purchase the property, and we probably won't know that until we're further along in the construction process and the due diligence, and maybe even after the facility is operational. So we would want to make sure that we have the ability to protect the commission's right to purchase the property if the landlord can simply say, we want you to leave all the improvements on the property when the lease is terminated. So those were really the three points that stood out to me more than anything else and garnered the most discussion today in the meeting.
Thanks, Bob. Alderwoman Sims.
So if we voted yes on the ordinance to go forward with the intergovernmental agreement and the bylaws, adopting them, and then we never entered into the lease, what happened? I mean, it just dies on the vine there. I hope it doesn't, but I just want to make sure now that these things are being separated out, and that wasn't really how it was presented to us previously. What happens, in that scenario? Are we penalized? I mean, or what would we just, pack our bags and go home? What does that look like?
Well, the commission, once it is formed, it could be dissolved, but there may be other duties or training exercises. I know that there are training activities now when we don't have a facility. So it may be that the commission would want to continue operating and providing training opportunities, even if a property is not leased. I don't know, but it could do so. The intergovernmental agency or commission that is being formed is separate and apart from the lease.
If I may, the city previously approved an intergovernmental agreement among Clayton and Richmond Heights and the city for a joint training apparatus, a regime, where there is a single training officer appointed for the four departments, excuse me, that includes Maplewood. So that exists separately. This commission was created with the view to an entity with regard to a real estate interest and capital investment, which is separate. So the joint training intergovernmental agreement would continue, is not affected by this. Does that help your question?
I just want to make sure that going forward with this intergovernmental agreement in no way means that we are adopting that lease, because I think that sounds like there's still work to be done on that, and that's what I'm most concerned about. And then I
does not approve that lease.
Okay, and then I had another, I still have a question. In looking at the earliest version of, or the latest version, I think the one that I have, in board docs was dated May 1. It was not a red line version, but I think you identified some important issues that we've discussed, and so we look forward to the kind of progress you're able to make with the landlord's attorney. But it also concerned me when I was looking at section 14 of the lease, which is the subordination provisions, and it says that we would agree to subordinate our lease interest against existing or any future mortgages, which I found problematic, because if they go use the property as collateral and then default on the loan, and then they sell it, we're out, as I read that. I mean, it may be one thing to have existing mortgages, but maybe that we're, you know, the future ones, let's talk. Or, I mean, I just found that to be, it's a 20-year scenario that gave me concern. You know, see what, that even if they mortgage the property, we're not gonna be put out on the street if there's a default and a sale pursuant to a power of sale.
Sure, and that is a valid concern, particularly if we don't have the three-part right of first refusal, right of offer, right of purchase that I drafted, because that would be the commission's protection under that scenario, would be to establish fair market value and purchase the property. But it's fairly typical to subordinate a lease to existing financing.
But it was
just
future financing that I found trouble. I mean,
Yeah.
at least, you know, maybe it's one thing in an existing mortgage, but, you know, maybe it's our agreement's not reasonably withheld, but it just concerned me that if they down the line leverage this mortgage, this property, and then default, as I read it, we could be, you know, the owner the successful bidder could put us out on the street. So if that was another, I think, an additional concern, I think, that should be vetted out.
Okay, that is not one that was previously brought to the attention of the negotiating team, but we can certainly talk about it.
And Bob, that's why I wanted to have this discussion tonight, and an opportunity for the board to raise any other concerns that might not have been previously expressed. Ultimately, I guess, you know, the real question, as I see it, the way that this commission is drafted, and with the bylaws, do you see a scenario where this board will have an opportunity to vote to either approve or not to approve any lease?
Not directly.
Okay.
Because, yeah, the way it's set up, that is a function of the board that governs the commission.
Right. The commission makes the decision. Is that a unanimous, so there are 3 members of the board, is that right, or are there 4?
There are 3.
3. And any action by the commission, is it unanimous? Does it require unanimity, or is it 2 out of 3? If you know, I'm sorry to put.
Yeah, it does not require unanimity.
Okay, so hypothetically, 2 out of 3 could vote to go ahead and authorize the lease.
Correct.
Okay. Alderman Plufka.
You kind of stole, I mean,
Oh, sorry.
No, that's fine, because that was my issue, was now that we're talking more precisely about what we're doing tonight, which is deciding whether to enter into this creation of a commission and be a part of it, and the bylaws that are a part of this seem to have the ability to bind the member communities to a lease agreement. So our ability to impact that lease agreement is at best indirect if the commission is voted into existence tonight. We have a representative, but it's only one of 3. So even if our representative has objections to the lease and we instruct them not to approve the lease, the other 2 members of this commission could go ahead and approve the lease despite our concerns. Is all
yeah,
that I
go
said,
ahead.
is that right?
That is the way the bylaws are currently
That's what I
drafted.
thought.
Yes.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Anybody else? Yeah, Alderman Weggie.
Yeah, well, thank you both for that clarification. That was my question, and I think there was good clarification. You know, going back to the lease, I still see, even with the responses, a lot of ways that this could go sideways. You know, there are words that is it is our expectation that there will be reasonable agreement. Well, you know, that's not the purpose of a lease, to have an expectation and hope to get the reasonableness. Who knows what's going to happen in 20, 30, 40, 50 years? I support the firemen having great training facilities. I am just completely uncomfortable with this for $500,000 with unknowns and ways it can go bad. Another one I'll point to is that they point to the worst case scenario is that we pay the property tax on a piece of property for 20 years and nothing gets built. Well, I view that as a terrible outcome. That the Brentwood residents will be paying the sales tax on a property not in Brentwood for 20 years and got nothing out of it. So I am still extremely uncomfortable with this going forward.
Okay. Any other questions for the chief or Bob Jones on this? So at this point, yeah, I'm sorry, Alderman Sims.
Well, I'm inclined to wait on a vote to see, to get our negotiation of the lease to a conclusion. However we like it or not, this is as far as we can get it, of addressing concerns, and that, you know, in that way, we would still retain our influence to directly, you know, have sway on the lease, unless there's, I'm missing something. I mean, it's just that not having the lease, you know, clarified and fully vetted in voting on the entering of this commission, I feel like we're giving up the potential of being able to have control over that lease. And I'll be honest, I would like to get there, but I'm not going to be. We need to be, you know, smart about how we go forward with this lease.
Well, since we're kind of brainstorming here, informally, what if there was a change to the formation of this commission that any decisions would require unanimous decision, or or put in there something that it would require board approval before there is a decision to be made? I mean, could you put that? I don't know why you throw anything in there. I would imagine the only question is, would everybody else agree to it? So before there is approval of this, I mean, here's the thing, Bob. I'm sensing a level of discomfort here because 99% of the time, as I'm sure you're aware, with all the experience that you've had representing municipalities, that boards vote on leases. They vote on purchase contracts. They're not voting on authorizing somebody to go out and bind the city to it. Instead, they have it in front of them, and they get a chance to vote on that, either yay or nay. And the way that this commission is written, there is ceding or giving that authority to a board, and they really have very little say. I mean, there's a way for the board to express what they'd like to see in it, but they really have no control over it. So I'm throwing it out to you, board. Would you be interested in doing that? Make it Alderman Gould.
I mean, I like that idea, and to your point, I mean, this board is elected by the people to represent them. The commission's board is not elected by the representatives or the citizens of each of these communities, and so if they thereby go and make decisions that have financial impacts, I think, you know, that puts us into a problematic situation, which is mitigated if the bylaws are rewritten that no votes come to the commission's board until they are approved by subsequent city board of aldermen. I don't know if that puts too much bureaucratic red tape in this, or if that's something that you all would be.
Well, I can certainly speak to that just briefly. In our current intergovernmental agreement for the training program, certain votes do require unanimous decisions. So we do have that with the current agreement.
You done? Alderman Plufka.
Yeah, so I thought that Alderman Gould's comments were spot on. I would agree with that. I'm prepared to vote for entering into this commission if the bylaws can be changed in whatever way is the best to reflect either giving us the commission members have to vote unanimously on lease contracts, certainly on the purchase of of this piece of equipment, things like that. Or if the bylaws, if it's easier to change the bylaws such that any move like that or any decision like that must be taken back to the original city's boards of aldermen and be voted on there before they're even considered by the commission. Whichever way is the better way to alter it, I'm prepared to vote for it at that point.
Kevin, it looks like you're wanting to weigh in.
Well, I just would observe that section 4.17 of the bylaws of the commission provide that a member can resign at any time with no notice requirement. A member may resign from membership at any time, subject to any contract among the members or between the members and the commission, which would be these bylaws. So if the city's member, if the commission is proposing to take an action which the city objects, you resign and you're out.
But doesn't that conflict then with the commission? Because there's a withdrawal section of the commission that says any member may withdraw upon giving 1 year's written notice to the commission. And provided that if the commission, prior to the giving of such notice, shall have incurred indebtedness in conformity with the powers, then that member can withdraw, but they're still on the hook for it. That seems to be inconsistent with the bylaws, where it gives the committee the ability just to, because that's the provision that concerned me right there, is that and the lack of unanimity on the committee members. Seems to me the thing to do is, the board would have to ratify any type of an agreement. So whoever the voting member is that represents Brentwood would first have to come to you all and get approval, and then they can go back and say, I'm authorized to enter into this lease. I'm authorized to move forward with the construction of this thing, if you all decide to do that.
Well, that is correct, that there is a 1-year notice provision required in the intergovernmental agreement. Of course, the bylaws are adopted by the board of the commission. So the bylaws have not been adopted, and they would have to be reconciled.
Thank you, Bob.
So we'll leave it up to you all. If somebody wants to make a motion to approve this at this point, or if you want to make a motion, I think technically we could table this to give them some time to try and address this and bring it back to you on the 15th. Is that correct, Kevin? Or, yep, I'm hearing that is correct. So if somebody wants to make that motion, feel free.
I would love to make that motion to table this until our next meeting.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion to table this until May 15th for the purpose of addressing all the concerns that we've expressed tonight. Any discussion on that motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, Chief. Brings us down to second read of Bill number 6457.1. By title only, please, Mr. City Attorney.
Bill number 6457.1, second reading and consideration for adoption. An ordinance amending section 400.1880 of the Brentwood City Code regarding outdoor lighting to limit the correlated color temperature to 3,000 degrees Kelvin. I would add that the bill before you incorporates the amendments orally made at the last meeting. It's not necessary to amend again by the .1. It incorporates incorporates each of the changes that you all made during the course of your discussion last meeting.
Thank you. The chair would entertain a motion to perfect Bill number 6457.1 into ordinance form.
I make a motion.
Oh, second.
All right, we have a motion by, I believe, Alderman Plufka, seconded by Alderman Waggy. Any discussion on that? Roll call, please.
Alderman Plufka.
Yes.
Alderwoman Tice.
Yes.
Alderwoman Sims.
Yes.
Alderman Weggie.
Yes.
Alderman Gould.
Yes.
Alderman Lockmiller.
Yes.
Alderwoman O'Neill. Alderman Shelton.
Yes.
By a vote of 8-0, bill will become ordinance number 5088.
Great, thank you. That brings us down to New business, we have two items. The first up is Bill number 6459. Can we get a first read by title only, please?
Bill number 6459, first reading, an ordinance amending sections 400.1320 and 400.1330 regarding conditional use of property in the A and B single-family zoning districts for adult daycare services.
Great, thank you. Whitney?
Good evening. I'm here to answer any questions. I do have one change in the agenda. I did not mean to indicate that it was first and second reading tonight. I know our practice is it's always 2 meetings, so I meant to take the second part out.
Okay, so you're not going to be asking for a second read tonight.
Yes, and for this item and the next one, so.
Okay. I think that's what the confusion was on my part. Alderman Plufka,
Thank you.
sorry.
Can I ask a question of the folks from Larch? So do you know what the densities were with Family Forward? I imagine you might because you had a kind of a relationship with them, but do you know, even going back as far as Missouri Children's Home, what the densities were at that location?
I don't know on paper. I mean, no.
Do you have a sense? I mean, well, I was leading up to this question, and I think I already know the answer. The densities that you propose, the raising of that one home and the building of a new home, and the 4 people in there, and the 10 or so that would occupy the administration building that fronts onto Litzinger, does that represent, in your experience, less density than what has been there in the past over the years?
Yes. So, and also because
Quite a bit, actually, right?
yeah, the
Yeah.
big building was the residence. So they had children in the basement and on the main level. I mean, the basement's a walkout. It's above ground windows and everything.
Right.
They were all labeled on the plans as bedrooms. And one of the first architects I met who came through there was significant work we had to do just to get in with sewer and all that. And he walked through and he jumped back when he saw the empty room in the basement. He goes, "Where are all the beds?" And I said, "What do you mean?" And he said, "There were beds just lined up because, with children, you have to have a home for them. Whereas with adults, they're staying with their family until, they go to an institution or a hospital." So there's just a different licensing. We're not allowed, we could never have a 10,000 square foot group home.
And so your plans for those rooms that you're talking about would be to provide administrative offices and space,
Right.
meeting
And
space and things like that.
right. And therapeutic programs for a small number of people.
So for a small number of people, that was going to be my
Yeah.
question. So, and if every single friend or relative of the 4 folks that eventually will live in the home that'll be at the eastern end of the property, that represents maybe 4 additional cars. How many spaces do you have in the lot currently, right now?
I believe we have 23, but there's, some of it is not being used well. Like we can redesign it to probably get 25.
Okay. And your anticipation of, during the week at least, the coverage, the parking coverage is going to be in the low teens.
Right. Because the people that are working in the day program go and pick up. It's the same staff that are, so they go and get people because they're either living in our group homes.
Right.
So that's the same staff that drive them and drive a group of people over with a van, or it's people living with their families, and the families can't bring them. That's the whole point of us providing support. So we go get them and bring them. So it's not like we don't even say daycare, that's just technical. It's not like you have families lined up dropping people off or like you would at a school. It's just not like that.
Do you know this yet, what you think the anticipated parking flow will be through that lot? It typically was entrance on Litzinger and exit on McKnight.
McKnight. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, but sometimes it's exiting on Litzinger as well.
Okay.
Just depends on how we can arrange it a little bit differently. I mean, it's all painted lines now, but I think we're trying to think that
And the
through.
curb cut there is wide,
Mm-hmm.
wide enough for 2 cars.
Yep.
Okay. What a great addition to the city of Brentwood. Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Alderwoman Tice.
So I'd just like to tell my fellow members of the board that I strongly support this. There's a great need for housing for people with developmental and intellectual disabilities, and a great need for day programs. This exists in other communities. There is a very similar model with lots of homes and a very large community center in the middle of Creve Coeur. If you drive down Dawtell Lane, you'll see it. So I think this is great. I think it is, it's going to make our community much richer and more diverse, and I look forward to this. And this is just a zoning change, so they have to go back through conditional use. So there's just a lot of more. This isn't a final thing.
That's a great point that Alderman Tice just made. This is not a determination on the applicant. This is simply at this point a text amendment.
Correct. And that's what I was going to clarify. This is just to allow the use within the A and B district, and they will have to come back and address any site-specific requirements under the conditional use permit.
I was just looking
at a
ahead.
later date. Yeah.
I was just looking ahead.
Alderman Gould, did you have one?
I would echo the comments of Alderwoman Tice. My sister actually lives in that home and benefits by a lot of these programs, and I do recognize that they are a desperate need, especially in a central corridor. There's not a whole lot of opportunity for that. I also would argue that there's a lot of good volunteer opportunity then through this, probably with our community and our high schools, that it could offer up for more acceptance and inclusion, understanding of these type of individuals. And I know that when they go to these programs, they're not roaming around all over the lot. They're in the rooms, and they're being helped either occupationally, physically, or mentally. So I think it's a great thing. As it relates to the text amendment, how many residential lots do you know of that are just kind of in the middle of anything that are over half acre? Not many, right?
Not many. We do have a child daycare center on further in the A district. That's the only other property that has a conditional use permit that I know of.
So, I mean, by approving a text amendment like this, it's not like, there's the ability for somebody to just kind of in the middle of somewhere that has a quarter acre, obviously, and third acre.
Right. They would have to meet the minimum half-acre standard. And then it would also have to require, review of the site specifics for any conditional use.
So I think every time we take up amendments to text, we have to consider, okay, what other impacts potentially are going to be in the community? And I think this is also one of those that just becomes kind of a unique parcel that seems to be a good use of it by combining the lots and allowing for this amendment. I'm in favor of it.
Alderman Plufka.
Sorry, can I ask one other question?
Sure.
Splitting this into first and second readings and separating it by 2 weeks, what does that do to your timeline, if anything, in terms of your development? Does it hinder you in any way? It does not? Okay. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Anybody else, any other questions? If not, we will take this up for a second read on May 15th. My math is correct. All right. Thank you. Hold on, Whitney. We've got bill number 6460. Can we get a first read by title only, please?
Bill number 6460, first reading, an ordinance amending section 235.170 to clarify those items that should not be composted in residential facilities.
Okay, thank you. And who is presenting on this? Oh, I thought, yeah.
Came out of the Sustainability Committee. There was a need to clarify those items that can and can't be composted. Currently, it just lists food scraps as not allowed composting material, when obviously there are some food scraps that we do want to be able to compost. So we just wanted to clean up this language and clarifying what can and what should and shouldn't be composted on a residential setting.
Alderman Weggie.
If I may add some background as well. So we've been doing the Compost at Home program for 2 years here in Brentwood, and A requirement of that is that you have to take training from the BOTAN, Botanical Garden, on what to compost. And everybody who took that training and follows that guidance has been doing it illegally up until this point. So, because it does not cause for food scraps or vegetables, and that's kind of the whole point of that. So, this is consistent with places around here. Just hasn't been changed since the 90s.
Are we going to start a CCE, continuing composting education program, mandatory hours annually?
Yeah, I mean, maybe. We will definitely come up with a better name, though.
All right. And we're only doing a first read on this tonight.
If I may, I wouldn't, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I would make a motion for a second read. I consider this to be administrative. This went through sustainability, this went through public works. This is in line with what all are surrounding, and again, with the 2-year compost at home.
Second.
This
Yeah,
is,
if that motion were made, I would second that.
All right, we have motion for a second read tonight and seconded by Alderman Gould. Any discussion on that motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Mr. City Attorney, can we get a second read of Bill number 6460 by title only, please?
Bill number 6460, second reading and consideration for adoption. An ordinance amending section 235.170 to clarify those items that should and should not be composted in residential facilities.
Thank you. Chair would entertain a motion to perfect Bill number 6460 into ordinance form.
so moved.
Second.
Motion by Alderman Wecky, seconded by Alderman Plufka. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Alderman Plufka? Alderwoman Tice?
Yes.
Alderwoman Sims?
Yes.
Alderman Weggie?
Yes.
Alderman Gould?
Yes.
Alderman Lockmiller?
Yes.
Alderwoman O'Neill?
Yes.
Alderman Shelton?
Yes.
By a vote of 8 to 0, Bill 6460 will become ordinance number 5089.
Thank you. Brings us down to citizen comments. Once again, if anybody in the public cares to address the board, now is the time to do so. You will be given up to 3 minutes. Just please state your name and your address. Sorry.
Urban, and I just wanted to tell you guys about the excitement in our neighborhood today. We went out to do yard work and immediately realized that there was a pretty sizable stream of bees in the tree. So I contacted my neighbor who had the same thing happen last year. She gave me a phone number. I called the guy. Within like half an hour, he was there, and he was able to get them out of the tree and put them in a hive on the ground. And he's coming back later tonight to make sure he got the queen. But if anybody wants the phone number, I'll be glad to share it, because it was really cool to watch him get the, because we weren't going to be able to do the yard work because they were not happy. It was so windy, they would get blown out of their little cocoon, whatever, and then they'd all have to so it was kind of fun. So he was a good guy, and he'll be happy to come again if we need him.
Great. Great. Well, thank you very much for sharing. Thanks for taking time to come down here tonight. Anybody else? If not, see no further business, this meeting is adjourned.